going to do this. I'm going to do everything I can. And when I did that, I started to physically get better, but mentally it was still so challenging. I was eating what I needed to eat. I was talking in therapy groups. I was using all my time as much as I could in treatment, but it was still so painful emotionally. My treatment team knew that I needed to stay in treatment after a month in residential, but my insurance company didn't think that I needed that. So, at that point, I remember having a conversation with my therapist about whether or not I was going to stay in treatment, whether or not I was going to stay in residential because my insurance didn't believe that I needed that. And I remember just collapsing and crying, and I didn't know, this had finally been working for me, and it was going to be ripped away from me, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I needed that level of care. And that was when, I'd always been a person of faith and a person of prayer, like I said, but I didn't have a structured prayer that I would say every day. Now, that's changed. So from that day on, I started every night, when my head hits the pillow, I say, "Dear Lord," and I thank Him for the day. I thank Him for individual things that made a difference in my day and in my life that day. And then I ask Him for what I want, for what I think I need. But I always end saying, "Whatever is your will, that is what shall be done." And I lived that way for a year. I still do that. But coming through, I came back to school my sophomore year, last fall, and I started to slip. I was still praying, I was still going to church, I was still going to therapy, but I was slipping. And that was really difficult for me because, again, it was like, what is it going to take? I thought I was good. I thought I was recovered, and that wasn't the case. So I went home at the end of last semester, and I went back to treatment. I went back to a day program just to, they call it like a little tune-up, because I knew I needed something. I didn't want to leave school again, but I knew I needed something. So I went to treatment for one day. The following weekend, a bunch of stuff happened with my dad, and I won't go into detail with that. But the following Monday, so my second day in treatment, my dad threatened to hurt himself. I walked into the hallway at the treatment center and collapsed on the floor, crying. I didn't know what was going to happen to my dad. I had never been so scared. At that moment, have you guys heard of the term fully rely on God? That was when that phrase became the only thing I had. I could only rely on God. In that moment, there was nothing I could do but pray and ask Him and hand my worries and hand my Father over to Him. There was nothing I could do. My treatment team helped, and later on we found out my father had been having an affair. At that point, I could have completely turned back to my eating disorder. It's a coping mechanism. I had never felt pain like this. I had never felt abandoned like this. And at that moment, in that time, I realized you're as strong as your faith. That day, when everything happened with my dad, when I was at my treatment center, and my treatment team helped me figure out what we needed to do for my dad. He was fine, he was not going to hurt himself, but the police did have to get involved. And there was a bunch of stuff that I had to do, talking to them and talking to my therapist. And after everything happened, my therapist looked at me and goes, "So, I know this is difficult for you, but you need to eat your lunch." And I just looked at her like, "Are you crazy?" was like, So I prepared my lunch, and she let me eat with her in her office, and I ate it. I ate the entire meal, and I looked at her and I said, Caitlin, if I ever tell you that I can't eat something, it's just too scary, it's just too much for me right now, remind me of this moment. Because I just watched my father's life flash before my eyes. And I was still able to do what I needed to do. And at that moment, in that time, I had to fully rely on him, on God. There was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could say to my father to make him choose me, to choose my family. And that was when I realized I had to choose myself in my recovery, and the only way I could do that was realizing that God had chosen me. In those moments, looking back with this prayer, I easily could have believed that God had abandoned me. Why would God make me suffer this way? Why would God allow my father to abandon me and my sister and my mother, the woman he has been married to for 27 years? Why would he do that to me? He must not love me. I could have had that perspective, but I didn't. After all I'd been through, I knew in that moment more than ever that I had to rely on him because he had never left me. He had never abandoned me. And since then, I have been able to do exactly what I need to do in my recovery. It's never easy. It's never easy, but I have to choose myself because no one else is obligated to choose me. My father wasn't obligated to choose me, despite the fact that I thought he was. God chose each and every one of you. So if you're struggling with anything, one, I recommend that you reach out because having a support system is the most influential and it's just the most impactful thing that can happen to you. But second of all, and above all, pray. The Our Father and all of your structured prayers are incredibly important. But it needs to be a dialogue with him. He didn't create you so you can sit in this hall and learn those prayers and learn just about the church. He created you because he loves you and he has a relationship with you and he wants a relationship with you. And that relationship is the only reason I am standing